A dog raised a baby gorilla. What happened 2 years later is unbelievable. The air in the high-altitude sanctuary was thick, not just with the humid promise of a coming monsoon, but with a palpable acidic scent of despair that seemed to coat the back of the throat. Deep within the emerald shadows of the Congolese highlands, a silence had fallen that felt heavier than the mist clinging to the ancient mahogany trees. In the center of a small, straw-lined enclosure, a golden retriever named Daisy sat as still as a statue carved from amber. Her breath was a soft, rhythmic hushing sound against the frantic, shallow gasps of the tiny creature cradled between her paws. It was a baby mountain gorilla, barely 3 months old, named Kijani. His skin was the color of damp earth, and his eyes, usually bright with the spark of primate curiosity, were clouded with the dull film of a life slipping away. The sanctuary keepers watched through the reinforced glass, their own breathing ragged. They had seen interspecies bonds before, but this was different. Daisy wasn't just guarding the infant, she was absorbing his pain. She had pressed her warm, sun-scented flank against his shivering chest, her nose buried in the coarse, charcoal fur of his neck. The mystery wasn't that she loved him, it was that she seemed to be keeping him alive by sheer force of will, defying every biological instinct that should have told a predator to stay away from the musk of a dying primate. What happened 2 years after this desperate vigil would not only challenge everything we know about animal biology, but would rewrite the laws of the jungle itself. Before we delve deeper into this incredible journey of a bond that transcended species, I want to take a moment to welcome you to our community. If stories like this touch your heart and remind you of the profound mysteries of the natural world, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel. It helps us continue to bring these long-form documentaries to life. We would also love to hear from you in the comments below. Tell us where in the world you are watching from right now and what time it is there. Your presence here makes this global family of animal lovers possible. Now, let us return to the misty forests of the Congo, where an impossible mother was about to face her greatest challenge. The story began in the golden light of a dying afternoon, months before the crisis took hold. The sanctuary was a place of textured beauty, the rough, mossy bark of the enclosure trees, the cool, slick sensation of river stones, and the constant, vibrating hum of cicadas that filled the ears like static. Daisy had arrived at the sanctuary as a rescue herself, a dog with a temperament so soft it felt like velvet. She had a soft mouth, a trait of her breed, but her soul was even softer. Kijani, on the other hand, was the survivor of a poaching tragedy. He had arrived smelling of smoke and the metallic tang of blood, his tiny hands gripping at the air for a mother who was no longer there. When the keepers first introduced them, they expected caution. Instead, Daisy walked toward the crate, her tail moving in a slow, hypnotic rhythm, and let out a low, vibrating whine that sounded like a cello string being plucked. She licked the salt from Kijani's tear-stained face, and in that moment, a bridge was built. For a year, they were inseparable. The sanctuary echoed with the sound of Daisy's paws thudding on the dirt as she chased a somersaulting Kijani. The air was filled with the sweet, grassy scent of chewed bamboo and the clean, soapy smell of Daisy's fur after a rain shower. They slept in a pile of golden and black limbs, a landscape of fur and skin that blurred the lines between canine and primate. But the peace was shattered as Kijani entered his second year. The crisis didn't come with a bang. It crept in like a low-lying fog. It started with a change in the sensory atmosphere of the enclosure. The playful thuds of Kijani's chest beating grew faint. The smell of the enclosure changed from the freshness of fruit to something sour and sickly, the scent of internal decay. Kijani began to refuse his milk and the tender shoots of wild celery the keepers brought him. He grew lethargic, his limbs heavy and unresponsive like lead weights. The experts were baffled, blood tests were run, and the results were a confusing labyrinth of fluctuating enzymes. They checked for parasites, for viral infections, for the common respiratory ailments that plague mountain gorillas, but everything came back inconclusive. Yet the physical signs were undeniable. Kijani was wasting away. His ribs began to poke through his skin like the teeth of a comb, and his skin lost its elasticity, feeling like dry parchment under the keeper's fingers. The most haunting change, however, was in Daisy. She stopped eating, too. She became a shadow of herself, her ribs echoing Kijani's. She would sit for hours, staring into the distance, her ears twitching at sounds the humans couldn't hear. The clinical reports grew grimmer by the day. Failure to thrive, the lead vet wrote in his journal, his handwriting shaky. The infant is fading, and the dog is following him into the dark. The desperation reached a fever pitch on a Tuesday night when the moon was a silver sliver behind the clouds and the air was heavy with the ozone smell of a looming storm. Kijani's temperature had dropped to a dangerous low. He was no longer moving. The keepers prepared for the end, setting out the sterile, cold tools of a necropsy they hoped they wouldn't have to perform. But Daisy refused to let them near. She didn't growl. Daisy didn't have a mean bone in her body, but she stood over the gorilla, her fur bristling, her body a shield of golden heat. It was then that the sanctuary's oldest tracker, a man named Samuel, whose skin was as lined as the bark of the trees he protected, noticed something. He watched Daisy's muzzle. She wasn't just licking Kijani, she was focused on a specific spot behind his left ear, a place where the hair was thin. He noticed that every time she licked that spot, her body would shudder, and she would let out a sharp, pained yelp. It was a high-stakes moment of realization. Samuel called the vet over, pointing to the spot. They sedated Daisy for just a moment, a process that felt like a betrayal, to examine the area. The reveal was a truth hidden beneath the surface of the skin and the depths of the heart. Buried deep within the tissue, invisible to the naked eye but not to the supernatural senses of a dog, was a dormant, calcified splinter of a snare, a remnant from the day Kijani's mother was taken. It hadn't caused an infection in the traditional sense. Instead, it had lodged near a major nerve cluster, causing a slow-release neurological toxicity that was shutting down Kijani's autonomic nervous system. But there was more. The vet discovered that Daisy's constant, obsessive licking had caused her own tongue to bleed, and the enzymes in her saliva, combined with the microscopic transfer of her own healthy blood cells through the thin skin behind Kijani's ear, had been acting as a crude, natural dialysis. She was literally trying to suck the poison out of him. She knew exactly what was killing him. She had been tasting the why of the mystery for months, her own body absorbing the toxins that Kijani's smaller frame couldn't handle. It was a biological miracle fueled by emotional desperation. The unbelievable part wasn't just the medical anomaly, it was the fact that Daisy had been consciously sacrificing her own health to act as a living filter for the soul she had adopted. The resolution began in the sterile, white-tiled surgery room, where the air smelled of rubbing alcohol and sharp, clean metal. The splinter was removed in a delicate operation that lasted 4 hours. When Kijani was brought back to the recovery enclosure, still groggy from the anesthesia, Daisy was already waiting. She was weak, her steps wobbling on the concrete floor, but as soon as she saw the small black shape of the gorilla, her tail gave a single, hopeful thump. The first moment of physical reconnection was a masterpiece of stillness. Daisy lay down, and the keepers gently placed Kijani against her belly. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Kijani's small hand reached out, his fingers curling into the long golden feathers of Daisy's fur. The tension in the room snapped. The most beautiful sound followed, synchronized breathing. As Daisy exhaled, Kijani inhaled. Their hearts, though belonging to two different worlds, began to beat in a shared cadence. The healing process was slow, marked by the gradual return of the sensory joys of their life, the smell of ripening bananas, the warmth of the afternoon sun on their backs, and the coarse, joyful texture of play. Daisy's strength returned as Kijani's did, as if they were two halves of a single battery. 2 years later, the sight at the sanctuary is one that visitors can hardly believe. Kijani is no longer a tiny infant. He is a burgeoning silverback in the making, a powerful creature of muscle and dense midnight fur. He weighs nearly 200 pounds, a giant compared to the aging golden retriever who still walks by his side. But the size difference means nothing to them. To see them together is to witness a dance of profound empathy. Kijani moves with a surprising gentleness, his massive hands grooming Daisy's graying muzzle with the precision of a watchmaker. They still sleep together, though now Daisy often uses Kijani's broad, warm back as a pillow. This story leaves a philosophical legacy that challenges the boundaries we draw between human and animal. We often speak of empathy as a complex, cognitive human trait. But Daisy and Kijani prove that love is a primal force, a sixth sense that exists in the marrow of the bone and the heat of the blood. It teaches us that communication doesn't require words. It requires a willingness to listen with the skin, the nose, and the heart. It suggests that in the natural world, there is a hidden web of connection that we are only beginning to understand. A world where a dog can recognize the scent of pain and decide that her life is a fair price to pay for another's. As we close the chapter on this extraordinary tale, we are reminded that the world is much kinder and more mysterious than we often give it credit for. Daisy and Kijani continue to live their lives in the misty highlands, a living testament to the power of a bond that refused to break. Their story is a reminder to all of us to look a little closer at the animals in our lives and to wonder what they might be sensing that we have forgotten how to feel. If this journey has moved you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate the incredible heart of the animal kingdom. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder of the beauty in the world. And before you go, we want to ask, have you ever witnessed an animal show a sixth sense or a level of intuition that left you speechless? Maybe it was a pet who knew you were sad, or a wild animal that showed unexpected kindness. Tell us your story in the comments below. We read every single one. Thank you for watching and for being part of this journey into the language of the heart.